In this video, we're going to look at how to factor trinomials with a leading coefficient that is not 1. When you have a trinomial in this form and your a value is not a 1, the method that we're going to use is called the AC method. And it's called the AC method because the first thing you're going to do is you're going to multiply a and c together. That's your coefficient of your x squared term and your constant. Those are your a and your c. You're going to multiply those together, and then you're going to look for two factors that multiply to give you that number, AC, and add together to get b, this middle coefficient. So let's look at an example. If we have 2x squared plus 7x plus 6, you can see here that my leading coefficient is a 2. And since it's not a 1, we cannot use the method that I showed you in previous videos. We have to use what's called the AC method. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply my a and my c together. Positive 2 and positive 6 multiply to give you positive 12. Now I'm going to look for factors of positive 12 that add to get positive 7. And so you might have to think about that for a few minutes. You're looking for numbers that multiply to get 12 and add to get 7. And those numbers are going to be positive 4 and positive 3. Now, this is going to look a little different than what we did before. What we're going to do with the two numbers that we've chosen is we're going to split this middle term into two terms with these coefficients. This middle term is 7x. I'm going to split it up to positive 4x and positive 3x. Okay, these have to combine to give me this middle term. So I'm not changing the value. I'm just splitting it into two parts. 4x plus 3x is 7x. Now once I do that, I'm going to bring the first term down just like it is, the 2x squared. It's going to go in the front. And I'm going to bring the last term down just like it is. The plus 6 is going to go at the end. Now, if you'll notice, instead of having 3 terms like I started out with, now I have 4 terms because I've split that middle term. Now, the whole point of doing that is so that we can factor by grouping. In a video I made previously, I went over factoring by grouping, and that's something that we use when we have 4 terms. We group the first 2 together and the last 2 together, and then we factor out the greatest common factor of each group. So the greatest common factor of this first group is going to be 2x. That's going to leave me with x plus 2. And then I look for the greatest common factor of the second group. It's going to be positive 3. When I factor out a positive 3, that's going to leave me with x plus 2 here as well. Now, this is a good sign. We want those to match. That's how we know factoring by grouping is working. So now I can factor out an x plus 2, and that's going to leave me with 2x plus 3. Okay, now just like before, if we wanted to check that, we could FOIL these out or distribute. I'm going to first distribute the x, multiply it through the second set of parentheses. X times 2x is 2x squared. X times 3 is 3x. Then I'm going to distribute the 2. 2 times 2x is 4x, and 2 times 3 is 6. If I combine my like terms, I get 2x squared plus 7x plus 6, which is what I started with, so that's good. Now, I want to show you one thing before I move on to the next problem. A lot of people get hung up right here when they find their two numbers and they find 4 and 3. And let's say your neighbor's working the same problem and they put the positive 3 first and the positive 4 second. Will it matter? And I'm going to show you that it doesn't matter. The work will not look the same, but you will end up with the same answer. So let's just say we started off the same. We're looking for multiples, or not multiples, sorry, factors of 12 that add to get 7. We find 4 and 3. But this person, instead of putting the 4 first, puts the 3 first. Positive 3x and positive 4x. Let's just see what happens. They're going to bring the first term down. 2x squared, and they're going to bring the last term down, plus 6. And then they have 4 terms, so we're going to group. We're going to take the greatest common factor out of each group. In the first group, the greatest common factor is an x. That's going to leave 2x plus 3. In the second group, the greatest common factor is a 2, a positive 2. And that's going to leave 2x plus 3. So as you can see, the work looks completely different. But then when I factor out my 2x plus 3, and it leaves me with x plus 2, you see that I have the same two factors, they're just in a different order, which is completely fine. So all that to say, it does not matter what order you put these two numbers in when you split your middle term. If you do the math correctly, you will still get the right answer. All right, so let's try another one. What if we have 3x squared plus 13x plus 4? Okay, once again, we've got a trinomial. The leading coefficient is not 1, and so we're going to have to do the AC method. And the AC method says that we're going to multiply a and c together, and it's positive 12 again, same that we got up here. But this time we're looking for numbers that multiply to get positive 12 and add to get positive 13. So this time my factors are going to be different. It looks like it's going to be 12 and 1. All right, positive 12 and positive 1. That tells us what we're going to split the middle term into. This is a positive 13x. I'm going to split it into a positive 12x and a positive 1x. Doesn't matter what order you put those in. All right, just make sure what you pick adds back up to be this middle term, because we cannot change the value. All we're doing is rewriting this so that it has 4 terms instead of 3. And the whole reason we do that is so that we can factor by grouping. So I brought my first term down, I brought my last term down. Now I'm going to group. I'm going to take the greatest common factor out of my first group, which is going to be a 3x. That's going to leave x plus 4. Now in my second group, you might take a look at that and you might say, well, I don't have a greatest common factor. But hopefully you'll remember that when we talked about factoring by grouping, we said you can always factor out a 1 if you can't factor out anything else. And so in this case, we would factor out a positive 1, which really doesn't change anything here. It'll still be x plus 4. Now you see that my parentheses match. So I can factor out an x plus 4, which is going to leave me with 3x plus 1. Okay, now let's throw some negatives in the mix. All right, what if I have 6n squared plus 7n minus 3? Once again, I have a trinomial. My leading coefficient is not 1, so I'm going to need to use my AC method. I'm going to multiply a and c together. That's going to give me negative 18. So I'm looking for factors of negative 18 that add to get positive 7. So I know I have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. I know that since this is negative 18, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. 2 and 9 look like they're going to work. I'm going to need the 9 to be positive and the 2 to be negative to make a positive 7. So negative 2, positive 9. Does that order matter? No, it doesn't. If you put them in the opposite order and you write them in the opposite order over here, then your work is going to look different than mine. But that does not mean you will not still get the right answer. I'm going to split my middle term, and I'm going to put my negative 2n first and positive 9n second. And again, make sure those add up to give you this middle term. I'm going to bring my first term down and my last term down. Now that I have 4 terms, I can use grouping. Okay, so out of my first group, I'm going to factor out my greatest common factor, which is going to be 2n. That's going to leave 3n minus 1. Remember, when you distribute this back together, it needs to give you what you started with. So that's where the 1 comes from. If you divide this by 2n, you're going to leave a 1. All right, the second group we can factor out a 3. That's going to leave me with 3n minus 1. So then I can factor out a 3n minus 1, which will leave me with 2n plus 3. Okay, now we're going to do just a few more. The steps in this are not difficult. You just have to do it several times to get the hang of what to do and remember the next step. All right, again, leading coefficient is not 1. Now, we should be on the lookout every time. Every factoring problem we do, we should be on the lookout for a greatest common factor in all the terms. This doesn't have one, but I just want to remind you to continue to be on the lookout, because if there were a greatest common factor for all 3 terms, we would need to factor that out first before we do anything else. But since there's not, we'll go ahead and proceed to the AC method. 4 times negative 12 is negative 48. So we're looking for factors of negative 48 that add to get positive 13. Okay, so negative 48 tells me my signs are going to be different. I'll worry about my signs in just a minute. I know I have 1 and 48, 6 and 8. That's all that's coming to me off the top of my head, but I can use my half and double trick to come up with some more. Half of 6 is 3, and double the 8 is 16. Or I could do it the other way around and do half of 8 is 4, and double the 6 is 12. So there's several possibilities here. It looks like 3 and 16 are going to work. The 3 will have to be negative and the 16 will have to be positive to come up with a positive 13. So that's what I'm going to split my middle term to, a negative 3 and a positive 16. So it'll be negative 3x and positive 16x. Remember, those have to add to give you this. Bring your first term down, bring your last term down, and then group. Once you group, you're going to factor out the greatest common factor in each group. In my first group, I can factor out an x, which will leave me with 4x minus 3. In my second group, I can factor out a positive 4, which will also leave me with 4x minus 3. Then I can take out a 4x minus 3, which leaves me with an x and a plus 4. Okay. Now, what about this one? 2b squared minus 13b plus 18. All right. Do I have a greatest common factor for all 3? I do not. So I'm going to proceed to the AC method. I'm going to multiply the 2 and the positive 18. That's positive 36. I'm looking for factors of positive 36 that combine to get at negative 13, which means they're both going to have to be negative because this is a positive 36. In order to multiply and get a positive, you either are going to have 2 positives or 2 negatives. If this is negative, you're going to have 2 negatives. All right, so let's see. Factors of 36. 1 and 36. 4 and 9. 6 and 6. I can half the 4 and double the 9. Let's see if any of these work. To make negative 13, it's going to be negative 4 and negative 9. Alright, so we're going to split our middle term into negative 4b and negative 9b. Doesn't matter the order. Bring my last term and my first term straight down. And then group. Out of my first group, I'm going to take a 2b. That's going to leave b minus 2. Now remember, when we learned factoring by grouping, we learned that if the first term is ever negative, whatever you factor out needs to be negative. So the greatest common factor would be 9. We're going to factor out a negative 9 because this first term's negative. That's going to leave me with b minus 2, because if you divide positive 18 by negative 9, you get negative 2. So now I'm going to have b minus 2 times 2b minus 9. All right, one last one. 3c squared minus 2c minus 21. There's no greatest common factor for the entire trinomial, so we'll go to the AC method. We'll multiply those two and we'll get negative 63. We're looking for factors of negative 63 that add to get negative 2. 9 and 7 is the first thing that comes to my mind, and 9 and 7 do work. We know one has to be positive and one has to be negative. To come up with negative 2, we're going to make the bigger one negative. Negative 9 and positive 7 will give you negative 2. Okay, so I'm going to split the middle one. Just to show you, it doesn't matter what order I write them in. I'm going to put the positive 7c first and the negative 9c second. It doesn't matter. Bring my last term down, bring my first term down, and then group. Take out my greatest common factor in each group. In the first group, that's going to be a c, which will leave 3c plus 7. In the second group, again, this first term's negative, so I know whatever I factor out needs to be negative. 9 and 21 are both divisible by 3, so I'm going to factor out a negative 3. That's going to leave me with 3c plus 7. Once again, if I divide a negative by a negative, that's going to leave a positive. So I end up with 3c plus 7 times c minus 3.